All right, folks, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered for Tuesday, April 16th, 2019. Three church fires in Louisiana. They are hate crimes. We'll talk to the pastor of one of those churches allegedly set on fire by the son of the sheriff. Disgraced New York City official, top cop Bernie Kerik, attacks Congresswoman Ilhan Omar over 9/11. Really? Really? You know what she's thinking. Mr. I was a felon who lied to authorities. Yeah, I gotcha. And Donald Trump continues to attack Omar as well. But she's raised a ton of money as a result of these attacks. Crazy-ass white folks, off-duty cop roughs up a sister for no reason. Wait until you see the video. A new report says whites pushing new ways to resegregate schools. Folks, many things have changed, but some have remained the same. We'll talk to an expert to break it down. Also, in the Tennessee House, they vote to criminalize voter registration drives. Yes, the GOP continues voter suppression. A new poll on what black women voters think of the state of the nation and what they want to see from elected officials. Also, Nipsey Hussle's death inspires Kings Stop Killing Kings rally in New York City. Tamika Mallory and my son, both of them spoke. We'll have the video for you. Folks, it is a jam-packed show. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go. All right, folks, so many people are talking about the massive church fire that took place in Paris at the Notre Dame Cathedral. But here in the United States, 3 black churches burned in the state of Louisiana. And hate crimes charges have been filed against the man, the son of a local sheriff. Prosecutors say Holden Matthews, a 21-year-old son of a deputy sheriff, was motivated by racism. It's an online history interest in white supremacist-leaning websites, and it's unfortunate this is taking place. And again, this has been going on. It took place last week, gotten some attention. Now we have someone who was under arrest as well. One of the churches took, of course, it took place in Opelousas, Louisiana, which is actually where my grandparents are from. So know that area well. The focus here, of course, for so many people is what will be done to rebuild these churches. There's a long, long history of course, black churches being burned as a result for a variety of reasons. Black churches became the symbol of black liberation, and white supremacists have long attacked them. In fact, that was a social media campaign social media thread the other day. It talked about what took place in Opelousas years ago, where African Americans were attacked. So I'm going to pull it up for a second to show you exactly what took place. So we're talking about history here of what is taking place. It's called the Opelousas Massacre. Took place in 1868, September 28th, 1868, where 27 black prisoners were executed. Okay? And you had massive attacks, up to 300 black folks who were killed in Opelousas, Louisiana. It was called the Opelousas Riot. And again, it was why did it take place? All because black folks were actually trying to vote. And so that's one of the things that we have seen all across this country. In a moment, we're going to talk to the pastor of one of those churches. I want to bring in my panel today, Dr. Chris Metzler. He's a conservative analyst. Kelly Bethea, she is a communications strategist. And Dr. Julianne Malveaux, economist, President Emerita, Bennett College. Chris, I'll start with you. We have been seeing this rise in hate crimes all across this country. White domestic terrorists. You have the FBI, of course, trying to target so-called black extremists, but you've had civil rights organizations saying, no, what about these white domestic terrorists? And you have the Trump administration, frankly, not doing enough to target them. And so to have this 21-year-old man, the son of a deputy sheriff, a white supremacist, to attack these 3 black churches, it speaks to this climate that we have in America in 2019.
Well, in fact, it does speak to the climate that we have. You know, as it relates to white domestic terrorists, you know, we go all the way back to, of course, Timothy McVeigh. And, you know, we seem to, in fact, have an increase. I believe that the Justice Department should be vigorous in its efforts against anyone. I don't care what the color of their skin is. I don't care about any of that. The question is, are they engaging in domestic terrorism? If they are, then the FBI has an obligation to deal with it.
And Julian, look, but the reality is we have seen this repeatedly. You see the increase in anti-Semitism. You see the increase in white supremacist groups. You look at, of course, Heather Heyer being killed in Charlottesville. You had the folks marching there. I mean, what we are dealing with here, and I keep saying this, I'm actually working on a book on this, we're dealing with white fear. We're dealing with folks in this country who cannot handle the changing demographics in this country. We have seen this historically when you have people of color, African Americans, Latinos, and others who are demanding full citizenship. We're seeing the striking back. And so you have this guy here, you got Dylan Roof. We can go on and on and on. White domestic terrorism is a problem in the United States.
Well, they don't want to use the terms white domestic terrorism. As you said before, they will say black identity extremists, but they won't say white domestic terrorists. And these are terrorists, but there is a very long history of white terrorism. We can go back to post-Reconstruction and look at what happened. I'm glad you mentioned the Opelousas Massacre. My family from Louisiana is from that part of Louisiana as well. But there's so many cases that we could document, Tulsa, Oklahoma, on and on and on. But here's the problem. Law enforcement has been part of that group of white domestic terrorists. So no, Brother Doc on the panel, the FBI is not going to investigate because they'd be investigating themselves. The police are not going to investigate, they'd be investigating themselves. The fact that a sheriff's son is responsible for these church burnings makes you wonder what kind of Wheaties they eat at their house, what they say at the dinner table. I mean, clearly law enforcement, so-called law enforcement, often goes hand in hand with white domestic terrorism.
Kelly, here's a tweet from Derek Johnson. I'm going to pull up in just a second. Derek Johnson, of course, is the president and CEO of the NAACP. And this is what he just sent out. It says the recent hate crimes charges against Holden Matthews for the Louisiana black church burnings reinforces the hate-fueled times we live in. Domestic terrorism is real, and we must continue to push Congress to thwart these vicious attacks, especially those against people of color. Kelly?
I don't disagree. I mean, this has been something that's been going on for pretty much centuries since we landed off the boats. And the fact that we are still in a position where we still have to say or try to convince people to say that this is a terrorist act because it's a white person. It's insulting, and it's really egregious. The fact that we still have to deal with something so traumatic, so inhumane, and to have people still say that, oh, it's a lone wolf act. Oh, this person clearly wasn't well. No, he did something in light of what he learned from his own society, probably his father included, as a sheriff. So there are no excuses for him. There are no excuses for this type of act, and it not only needs to be investigated, it needs to be prosecuted to the utmost extent of the law.
And again, folks, of course, the man who allegedly did his crime, 21 years old, and charged with a hate crime, the son of a deputy sheriff. And, of course, they say motivated by racism. Let's go to our second story, talk about motivated by racism, the constant attacks on Congresswoman Ilhan Omar of Minneapolis by Donald Trump and Republicans as well. Last night, Trump was in Minnesota for a rally. He told a local television reporter who asked him about the 9/11 tweet that he sent out about Congresswoman Omar. And here's what Trump had to say. No shock here.
Congresswoman Omar sent out a release last night saying that your tweet from a couple of days ago has led to direct threats on her life. Any second thoughts about that tweet and the way it was produced and put together?
No, not at all. Look, she's been very disrespectful to this country. She's been very disrespectful, frankly, to Israel. She is somebody that doesn't really understand, I think, life, real life, what it's all about. It's unfortunate. She's got a way about her that's very, very bad, I think, for our country. I think she's extremely unpatriotic and extremely disrespectful to our country.
She's got a way about her? Really? A way about her. Fox News last night, Bernie Kerik, the man, of course, who lied to authorities, who went to federal prison as a result of that. The same man who also used an apartment for his sexual affairs that was supposed to be used by folks who were, of course, at the site of 9/11. He attacked her on Sean Hannity last night on Fox News.
But I lost 23 people that work for me. We lost 400 first responders and close to 1,700 people that were in the building.
Unbelievable. And so you hear her anti-Semitic comments. Then the comment, really struck by what she said about, the way they say Al-Qaeda.
No, well, here's the issue, Sean. She's infatuated with Al-Qaeda, with Hamas, Hezbollah. She was at CARE at a fundraiser. She was the keynote speaker at a fundraiser for CARE, which, according to the United Arab Emirates, an Arab nation, they are a terrorist organization.
Okay, I'm sorry. Please show me the evidence, Bernie Kerik, where she's infatuated with Hamas, infatuated with Al-Qaeda. Folks, what you have here, or you have white folks like Bernie Kerik, like Donald Trump, who do not like the fact that you have the first one of two Muslim women elected to Congress. They are the fourth Muslims to be elected. Of course, you had Keith Ellison, Andre Carson. Now you have, of course, Tlaib from Detroit, and then you have Omar. To question, for Trump to say she doesn't understand a woman who was a refugee, a woman who escaped war in her home country to come here. No, I think she understands life a hell of a lot more about life than Donald Trump. What you have here, Julian, you have the consistent attacks because they do not like the fact that you have that the people of Minnesota elected a Muslim woman to Congress. That's what you have going on here.
Well, more than that, you have a hijab-wearing Muslim woman to Congress. And part of the issue with them is her hijab, the fact that she does cleave to her religious beliefs. Also, the fact that she's extremely articulate, the fact that she is very focused. She does not defer to Israel, to the popular notion that to be anti-Israel is also to be anti-Semitic, because we know that that's wrong. And CARE is not a terrorist organization. They have attempted to demonize this woman, and in doing so, they've signaled the radical right, the white domestic terrorists, that it's okay to attack this woman. So this woman has gotten hundreds of death threats, so many that Nancy Pelosi, who has hardly been a fan of hers, has increased security for her and for her family. I would say that Donald Trump needs to be ashamed, but he doesn't know shame. I mean, he really does not know shame. And that man you had on, the Fox guy, who, as you say, ripped off 9/11 survivors, ripped off survivors with his own sexual peccadillos, he has no right to say anything to anybody. You have to question the integrity of Fox News to have somebody like that on there.
Let me just, again, for the people who are at home watching, you have Bernie Kerik, who goes on Sean Hannity's show and talks about, how I lost men, and how I lost people in the World Trade Center. But what Bernie Kerik did not, here's what I'm reading. This is a December 15th, 2004 story from the New York Times, Chris. An apartment in Battery Park City that former police commissioner Bernie Kerik secured for his personal use after September 11th was originally donated for the use of weary police and rescue workers who were helping at Ground Zero. He wants to question her, and he used an apartment for his sexual affairs that was supposed to be for weary police and fire officers, and you somehow want to show that you are above her and everyone else when it comes to 9/11? The hell with Bernie Kerik, Chris.
Well, you're not going to get me to offer defense of Bernie Kerik at any time. I've always been extremely critical of Bernie Kerik. When he was nominated for the Director of Homeland Security job and had to withdraw during the Trump administration. So as it relates to Bernie Kerik, I put no stock whatsoever in what Bernie has to say. I think, though, the issue relative to Omar, look, I'm not a fan of Omar either. I don't believe that from the standpoint of all of the rhetoric she has put forth relative to Israel and all of those kinds of things, I just don't think that it's either appropriate or smart politically. But I don't, by the same token, let me not be heard as saying that I believe because she has come forth that she is worthy of death threats. I'm not saying that at all. I am just saying that with these two people, I am not a fan of either one of them because they are not, in my view, doing anything to advance the agenda. And as someone who used to be a special assistant attorney general in the state of Minnesota, I understand Minnesota politics very well. And she was elected by a constituency to whom she is beholden. And that's just the reality of this situation.
Kelly, again, what you have here, you have people who do not like the fact that Representative Omar dares to question or challenge Israel. In the moment, I'm going to play for you a comment that Bernie Sanders said last night, where he said it's not anti-Semitic to actually challenge Israel. Your thoughts?
It's not. I don't understand why we have such a powerful tie to Israel when it comes to things like this. We can be critical of almost every other country that we are allies to except this one. And it's bothersome because it restricts, important opinions that can actually further diplomacy. But back to Trump's comments about how she's been disrespectful to this country. You can write a Bible's worth of what Trump has done and said that has been disrespectful to this country, from calling, Hispanics, Mexicans, Latinos, and the like rapists and murderers on his campaign trail, to actually banning countries from coming into the United States or going out of the United States, to, just the blatant disrespect towards women, the blatant disrespect towards minorities. The list goes on. So the hypocrisy is not lost on anybody, but I definitely just wanted to note that.
Well, again, what you have here, you have, Julian, a plan by Donald Trump to focus on fear, to raise the hackles of white voters. She's so weird. She's different. I don't know where she comes from. Questioning literally her even presence in America. That essentially is what Donald Trump is doing.
Well, he called for her resignation some time ago. He's attempted to demonize her, to make her seem different, just as Kelly just said about Mexican, quote, rapists. I mean, he has attempted to marginalize and demonize this woman, as you said, using the politics of fear. If you look at what she stands for, she is not a radical extremist. In terms of most of her domestic public policy, she's quite in line with many other liberals, not even super progressives, but just liberals. In addition, as Bernie Sanders said, and as Kelly said, why can we not question Israel? The fact is that Israel exists because of extreme U.S. State Department foreign aid. We are propping up the killing, the disaffectation of the Palestinian population. people thrown off their homes, and then Netanyahu comes in and says he's going to settle, war of the West Bank, eliminating the possibility of a two-state solution. This makes no sense. In the United States, who will criticize any other country for any other reason, needs to look at Israel very critically. Human rights are Palestinian rights too.
And Chris, on that point, I mean, the reality is President George H.W. Bush held up billions to Israel because of them building on settlements. This notion that somehow you can't even question Israel or you can't question their lobbyists is nonsensical. She's a member of Congress who is there to represent her constituents. So we somehow can't question another country because they are an American ally?
Well, listen, as a member of Congress, she can question whomever it is that she wants to question. I think for a number of Republicans, the issue is they, in fact, believe that her comments are all about the Benjamin comments, all of a number of other comments are simply disrespectful and out of line.
But Chris, was it disrespectful when Donald Trump stood before the Republican Jewish Federation and literally said that Netanyahu is your prime minister? They were Americans. When Donald Trump literally talked about not needing Jewish money and saying because you want to control politics, I mean, I'm just trying to understand how that's acceptable, but somehow, oh my goodness, her daring to challenge Israel is somehow bad.
Well, I'm not saying that it's acceptable. I'm simply giving you what the arguments on the right are relative to this, because fundamentally, look, there is an element, and there are certain people on the right with whom I've spoken who have said, we don't need 9/11. We have government infiltration by people who are being elected to government. And so from my standpoint, the issue is these arguments are the arguments that are moving forward. And so what I have said to a number of my colleagues is, listen, if those are the arguments you're going to have and those are the positions that you're going to take moving forward, you need to, in fact, examine those arguments. And so I'm simply presenting an opposing point of view to what's being said here.
Bottom line, Kelly, what we are seeing here, we are seeing a precursor to Donald Trump's strategy in 2020. It is about fear. It is to demonize those who are Muslim, demonize those who are undocumented workers, demonize anyone because he is trying to ramp up his white voters.
And we've seen this strategy before, right? In the course of our history, we have McCarthyism. We have, during World War II, regarding the Japanese internment, the propaganda therein with that. During Reconstruction, once the enslaved were emancipated, the propaganda regarding that as they integrate into or try to integrate into society. And the sad thing is that it does work for those who are ignorant of what's actually going on. So I encourage, people who are voting, American citizens as a whole, to really just pay attention, to really just understand just how much of a liar Donald Trump is and how old his playbook is, and the ramifications of playing off of that playbook are great. Yeah. And we have evidence of how great those consequences can be. So come 2020, we're a year out. We have time to rectify these wrongs by voting otherwise. So I just encourage our voters, our people to just, do our due diligence and act accordingly.
Here's, of course, Senator Bernie Sanders last night at the town hall on Fox News addressing this very issue.
I will do everything in my power, and I hope that every member of Congress will fight not only anti-Semitism, but racism and anti-Muslim activity so that we create a non-discriminatory society. But it is not anti-Semitic to be critical of a right-wing government in Israel. That is not anti-Semitic, okay? So
again, that was Senator Bernie Sanders last night on Fox News. All right, time for our next story. And here we go. More crazy ass white folks.
I'm white. I got you, girl.
Yeah, illegally selling water without a permit
On my property.
Whoa! Hey!
You don't live here.
I'm uncomfortable.
All right, folks, here's the deal. A group of black women go to the apartment complex where some of the women live. According to one of the women, they are confronted by an off-duty Nacogdoches, Texas police officer. Now, he is not in uniform. The officer identifies himself as a security officer for the complex, and when some of the women ask to see his badge, the group begins to disperse. The officer then becomes belligerent and tackles one of the women.
Oh my God! What the fuck? Oh my gosh! Call somebody right now! Let go of her!
Yes! I'm Verge. It's called Grow. He's over here trying to tackle my friend. We are leaving.
The police officer is being investigated for his use of force after he arrested the woman down on the ground. Now, the officer has not been identified. Kelly, I want to start with you. Again, one of these crazy cases. Here's a off-duty cop, I'm a security guard, gets mad because they dare ask for your name and your badge. Hey, what the hell? I'm just going to tackle you and take you down.
I feel like this is another case of white fragility and toxic masculinity all wrapped up into one, because there is no reason for a question to get you that riled up. And I feel like the reason why he got so riled up, one, because this was a person of color, and two, this was a person of color who was a woman. And you have a situation where there's no reason for this. Because I guarantee you, if it was a white woman, he wouldn't act this way. If it were a black man, he might not act this way, although we have some evidence to, the contrary. But it's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous, the fact that we are so just, I don't even know what else to say. I've seen so many of them. I'm trying not to be desensitized by it, because these are still human beings living their everyday lives, and that just gets jeopardized by crazy ass white people. But at the same time, the craziest white people just need to stop, period.
Chris, what you continue to have here are cops who basically essentially are saying, don't you dare ask me a thing, don't you question me, or I'm going to sit here and arrest you.
Yeah, and look, this kind of behavior in police departments across the country goes on. The reality is that, in fact, it goes on. There is a sense of authority, and certainly I'm not suggesting that you don't respect the police. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying, however, is respect goes both ways. And if there is a question, that this whole reaction here was just unbelievable to me, because it seems like the police officer was just, what's the problem? We don't know who you are. And so I think in this situation, it's completely out of control.
But Julian, that's what we see all across the country. Out of control cops who don't like to be questioned by anyone.
Precisely. Furthermore, I would wonder if this man was intoxicated or if he was under the influence of something, because that behavior is completely irrational. He had clearly simmered himself, his white supremacy, simmered himself in it. And then how dare you, black woman, ask to see my badge? He's in plain clothes. I mean, if some random walks up to me and says, why are you here? My answer is, you better step, keeping it clean for your show, Roland, but you better step and get the out of my face. And she was within every right to do that. Again, I have to say, was this man intoxicated? Why has he not been arrested? Why has something not been done to him already? And why was this woman arrested? This makes no sense at all. But these folks are out of control. It's partially, again, white fragility. They're afraid. And it shows up in a micro way, not a macro way, so that you can see other cops say, well, I would never do anything like that. But, you have a segment called Crazy Ass White People, because there are too many crazy ass white people in this country.
Well, and again, also what we're seeing these actions by these individuals, and at the end of the day, it's how they are operating. Now, here's the other piece. There also was some dash cam footage that was released. Give me 1 second, because I'm actually on KTRE.com. That's the website of the local station. And so I'm going to play some of this right now, the raw footage. Just give me a second as I try to pull it up. And again, for the people out there, this is also why, and it's unfortunate, it should not be the case. We should not have to be constantly walking around with our cameras and our phones. But we cannot trust police officers to be, frankly, to do the right thing. And so this is the dash cam footage, pull it up, Henry, that was released when the cops also showed up. There was an attorney out of Fort Worth who sent me this story and this video. Also today there was a rally that took place at 3 p.m. at a park there as well. You see the guy there in those plaid shorts. Based upon the previous video, he is one of those officers. And so you see him chasing after someone. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and try to advance this video if I can, so we can move it forward to see what do we have here. But again, this is the dash cam video that they actually released. And Julian said it, we said earlier, the officer's name not being released. And that, to me, shows you how also they continue to protect these cops and their wrongdoing when they are involved in these sort of situations. And so this is from KTRE television. So I'm on their website, KTRE.com. This dash cam video actually was released 5 days ago. And so you actually see from another perspective the video of him taking down one of the women. Here you can come back to me. And so that video there. And again, like I said, today there was a rally that took place in Griffith Park there. They asked folks to wear all black. This is right here, just a Periscope feed posted about an hour ago of folks there marching. And so trying to bring attention and awareness to this actual case. And so we will certainly let you know what happens next with this case. Now it's time for us to go to a break. We'll be back on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Whatever the white man has done, we have done and done better. Educator Mary McLeod Bethune.
All right, folks, hashtag HBCU Giving Day. University of the Day is Southwestern Christian College. Of course, Southwestern Christian College was founded in 1948, located in Terrell, Texas, the hometown of Jamie Foxx. It is a private college operated by the Churches of Christ. If you want to support Southwestern Christian College, you can go to swcc.edu, swcc.edu. All right, folks, there were two huge decisions in the mid-1950s, Brown versus Board of Education, and then Brown 2, that dealt with segregation in our schools. But the reality is, ever since then, America still has not dealt with the reality of segregation. You have folks who have still been fighting this since 1954. What we see today, we still are seeing segregated schools. Why? Because our schools are based upon our neighborhoods. That's one of the things that we see. And then at the end of the day, what you have here is that you have largely white neighborhoods, you have largely black neighborhoods. We're still seeing, though, that segregation is growing in 2019. Why is that? Joining us right now is Zahava Statler, Director of Policy, Ed Build. They are a nonprofit organization focused on bringing common sense and fairness to the way state funds public schools. We keep talking about this over and over and over again, Ms. Statler. And at the end of the day, the problem continues to be really how our neighborhoods are constructed and how people want their dollars to go to their schools. And if you make more money than somebody else, you can frankly, in essence, create your own school district as a result of the money you make and where you live.
Yeah, that's true in a majority of our states. There are 30 states that have a legal process in place that allow neighborhoods to pull out of their school districts and create a whole new school district, build a new wall around their property wealth, build a new wall around their kids, and say, we're going to keep our local dollars in and the needier kids out.
And we still have groups who are fighting that. So the question is, what can still be done to fight segregated schools? And let me be honest, I talked to some black folks who said, you know what? Damn the white folks. If they don't want to go to school with us, fine, we'll educate our own.
Well, listen, this is really a matter of district will, right? When you have a school district, you have the room to integrate within that school district. You don't need to be zoned to the school down the block. You don't need to replicate housing segregation in the schools. It is possible to integrate within a school district. What's impossible is to integrate between school districts. So when a wealthy white enclave draws a new border, creates a new school district, fences itself off and says, we're no longer part of X county school system, we're part of our own, well, that means that those kids are no longer part of the district. They can't be integrated.
So, okay, so let's unpack that. Because what you're talking about is what Dr. Steve Perry often talks about, zip code discrimination. And that is you can only go to your neighborhood school. So are you saying that what the way school districts should operate is that if you want to go to any school in the district, you should be allowed to?
Well, really, it's a matter of district policy. You know, if you think about it, when you say neighborhood school, New York City is one big school district. And they have a way of enrolling students in high schools that have interest to them across the district. You know, every school district in Florida is an entire county. The way that county is run, the way that district is run, those schools could be integrated, or the county district could choose not to integrate those schools. That's possible within a school district when you draw the lines big, when you draw the lines broadly. But when a local neighborhood says, you know what, we're not so interested in part of your school district, we're going to draw a new line, we're going to create a micro district, a little splinter district that's just for our kids, what happens then is those kids aren't available to be part of a district-wide integration plan, and that means that it becomes impossible. But the reason this is happening isn't just about diversity, it isn't just about integration, it's also because the way we fund our school district starts at ground level with local property tax. So when a wealthy community says, I want my dollars to go for my kid and not other people's kids, that's when these lines get wrong. So
well, and
about the money.
And that's really exactly how it happens. And so you have these parents who will go to these places and say, you know what, change it. And look, it even happens when you talk about on a college level. I remember in Texas where they put in the top 10% rule after the Hotwood decision came down. They said you couldn't use race. They said, fine, if you graduate in the top 10% of your high school graduating class, you're automatically admitted to the state universities. Well, all these white parents in Austin, Westlake, and others are complaining, well, our kids, you know, all these kids at our kids' school are smart, so therefore, why should this kid at O.D. White in Fort Worth, who has a lower SAT score, be able to get into the University of Texas, and my kid can't? They actually got the rules changed. And so you have white parents who use their money and their power to change the rules, because even when you have a race-neutral policy, they still bitch and moan.
Here was the point of that policy, though. The policy was to recognize that being in the top 10% in one school doesn't necessarily look the same in terms of SAT scores as being in the top 10% of another school, because there's inequality at the grade school level. And why is that happening? That's happening because of inequality in resources. It's happening because we're replicating the inequality in our neighborhoods in our schools.
Well, again,
that's not something that needs to be happening.
Bottom line is, this is America. I keep telling everybody that there's only one agency that shares along with the White House. That's the Treasury Department. If you want to understand America, follow the money. And so when it comes to segregation of our schools, it's still follow the money. Zahava Statler, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
All right, folks, let's talk about what's happening in Tennessee, where Republicans there pass a bill that essentially criminalizes voter registration drives. The GOP, they control the House, and this is after Tennessee Voter Project registers 90,000 people. Now, it hasn't passed the Senate there, but the GOP controls the Senate as well as the governorship. Chris, I want to go to you. You're a conservative. We talked about this beforehand. Here you have Republicans there. We had one of the organizers on the show a couple of weeks ago. She actually said that the way that these rules are set up, if there is any error on a single voter registration card, they can slap a fine for every single one of those errors, and it's up to the local voter registrar to determine what that error is, even if it's a comma, even if it's if the initial was S instead of P or whatever. That's the extent that they're going. But seriously, we're criminalizing folks who are trying to register people to vote?
Well, hey, look, so first of all, of course, I believe that voter registration, people who are registered to vote should be who they say they are. So let's start there. However, when you get into a situation where you start to criminalize voter registration drives and things along those lines, I have spoken extensively to my Republican colleagues about this. Are you interested in the short game or the long game? Because criminalizing voter registration, when we say that, in fact, we believe every legal vote should count, is a contradiction, number one. Number two, it starts to make us look like we don't believe that we can win fairly and squarely.
Chris, I'm going to read this for you. The vote was 71-26, and this is what it says. They complained that they said that there were thousands of late filed registration forms, saying it was creating difficulties. And so what they're going to do is this here. It's going to require voter registration drives to undergo training and force them to hand in completed documents earlier. But check this out. The bill seeks to assess a civil penalty against groups that turn in more than 100 deficient voter registration applications. But again, the idea of what's deficient isn't even spelled out. It's really left up to that local voter registrar. And so they can say anything is deficient. Go ahead.
Well, and that's the problem. And also from a legal standpoint, look, you cannot be so vague. When you say deficient, but you don't offer guidance as to what deficiency is, from a strictly constitutional standpoint, that does not pass the smell test, much less the constitutional test. So, sure, if you want to have a rule like that, fine. However, you've got to tell me what deficient is. Deficient as defined by what? Is it an objective standard? Is it a subjective standard? What is it? It is that, ability. Nobody's saying that they don't have the right to make those rules. Certainly they have the right to do it, but it has to be done both in the context of the state constitution and the federal constitution. And from a strictly political standpoint, I go back again to the fact that as conservatives, as Republicans, we are to be fighting for the vote rather than fighting the right to vote. And in some cases, unfortunately, that's the path we're going down.
Julian, according to this story, the Nashville Tennessean, under the bill, a criminal penalty could be assessed if a group leading a registration drive does not take the required training.
And what's the required training and who administers the training? I mean, Chris, you're full of it, quite frankly. I mean, conservatives don't want to be fair. Conservatives have consistently attempted to suppress the vote. Let's look at Georgia. Let's look at Florida. And let's look all over the country. People are registering voters because we see it. We know that when people want to be included and vote, we're seeing different results than what the status quo is right now. That's why you have all this diversity in Congress now. That's why I have more women. That's why I have Ilhan Omar in Congress. No, y'all don't want that. Y'all want to arbitrarily, if you left out a period or hyphen or something like that, say, first of all, throw the registration out, but more importantly, attempt to suppress people's ability to register voters. That's unreasonable and it's unfair.
Kelly, check this out.
These people are letting you know where they're coming from.
But Julianne, I don't appreciate you painting me and every conservative with one brush, because that is absolutely wrong.
I don't care whether you appreciate it or not. I don't appreciate you defending these bankrupt, morally bankrupt policies.
case, I believe, if you're going to take it there, here's where I'm going to take it. I believe that liberals and people like you are interested in stealing the vote by having illegal immigrants vote.
Not even shoplifting,
like us in what context?
Hold on, Kelly, 1 second.
Okay, if that's the context you're going to put it in, you are having an unreasonable conversation. You are trying to attack me because I'm a conservative, and I'm not having it. I'm not having it.
1 second. Kelly, I want to go to you. I'm reading from the Nashville, Tennessean editorial. This is what they say. They say right here that the Tennessee, first of all, the draconian approach will make Tennessee the only state to criminalize the submission of voter registration forms. They also say Tennessee already has one of the lowest percentages of registered voters in the country. In the 2018 elections, Tennessee ranked 45th in citizens voting. Kelly.
To my panelist's point regarding Republicans wanting to fight for the vote as opposed to the fighting for the right to vote, statistics like this prove that they're not fighting for us in terms of what we want to do with our vote. And with laws like this, who does it impact the most? It impacts people of color, it impacts minorities, it impacts the elderly, because we still have a portion of our population that is still, old enough to not have all the required documents, such as a birth certificate. My grandfather has technically 2 birthdays because he wasn't allowed to be registered as a baby where he was in South Carolina. So he has legally 2 birthdays because of racism, basically. So with Tennessee being part of that Bible Belt, who is it impacting? It's impacting people who look like me. It's impacting people who look like my grandfather. It's not impacting people who want to vote for Donald Trump. It's not impacting people who want to preserve racism in this country. So again, I disagree with my panelists here in saying that this is what you guys aren't trying to fight for. It's proof that this is what you want to do.
And again, folks, what you're dealing with here is, as a Tennessean editorial says, the complaint is not people who were voting illegally. The complaint is we just had too many in the process. That's literally what the complaint is. And that's why there's a bill. It was just too many forms to process, which means that voter registration was working. All right, folks. Speaking about the whole issue of voting, for fighting for what's right, last year, the folks at AFSCME launched their I Am campaign, trying to focus on, of course, the next 2 years. Of course, following in the footsteps of Dr. King, working with the sanitation workers to get changes made in, of course, when they went on strike in February of 1968. Lee Saunders, the president of AFSCME, and he gives us an update on their I Am campaign.
In March 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke at Mason Temple in Memphis, Tennessee. Here's what he said in support of striking city sanitation workers. You are demanding that this city respect the dignity of labor. So often we overlook the significance of those who are not in professional jobs, the so-called big jobs. But let me say to you tonight that whenever you are engaged in work that serves humanity and is for the building of humanity, it has dignity and it has worth. Now is the time for us to be the change we want to see in our communities. That's what the Memphis sanitation workers did in 1968. 1,300 men and their families standing together, standing up to bigotry and brutality, risking their livelihoods by going on strike, insisting that their work serves humanity and has dignity. They were the change. Dr. King, who lost his life elevating their struggle, was the change. And exactly 51 years ago, the Memphis sanitation strike ended, with the city conceding to most of the workers' demands. Now it's time for you to be the change, for you to carry the mantle, for you to stare down injustice and inequality. Ask yourself what you would have done in 1968 and do it now. Be the change. That's my challenge to you today. I challenge you to demand more for our communities and more from our elected officials. More education for our children. more affordable housing for our neighbors, more infrastructure investments that create jobs in our communities, more rights and freedoms for working people, more access to the ballot box for everyone. In 2018, the I Am campaign engaged thousands of people in communities of color nationwide. We became the change. We were part of a movement that set a new course for our country. This year, our work begins anew. We have opportunities to show those in power that you matter and that you are here to stay. The time is now. We need you. Stay engaged. Start by checking your voter registration status and learning who your elected representatives are. And follow us on Instagram at IamBeTheChange. Change doesn't happen overnight, but it begins now, and it begins with you.
We certainly thank AFSCME for being a partner here at Roland Martin Unfiltered. Last week, Nipsey Hussle's funeral took place in Los Angeles, packed house at the Staples Center. But on Sunday, that was a rally in New York. It was called Kings Stop Killing Kings March. It was led by the rapper My Son, who knew Nipsey Hussle well. Also, one of the folks who spoke there is his good friend, Tamika Mallory. And here is some of that rally.
That it was bothering me, it was on my heart, the parallels of the two Eric Holders. One Eric Holder is accused of killing Nipsey Hussle. The other Eric Holder was the Attorney General of the United States of America, the first black. Those two people matter equally. I know that we want to condemn one for taking our brother's life. But we must recognize that the system that has been discussed here today, it made that Eric Holder and the other Eric Holder. And it is our responsibility, brothers and sisters, not to look at the shooter as being someone who our community does not care about. That's right. If we don't care about the person holding the gun as much as we do the person on the other side, we're missing the mark. That's right. All of our brothers and sisters matter. I will stand with my people every time. Every time. So when they tell me to speak against my brothers and sisters, I will not do it. Right. I will not condemn us because America has condemned the black and brown woman and man for too long.
All right, folks, that was one of those videos there. This also, the video I'm going to share with you, this was shot by Damn Deans at the very same march as well, so go to that.
Save the children! Stop the violence! Save the children! Save me! Nipsey Hussle! What's his name? Nipsey Hussle!
Today we are pledging to stop killing kings. Kings to stop killing kings. You know, we just lost Nipsey Hussle, which was a very inspirational, motivational part of my life. Some didn't even listen to his music, but then when this happened, you started doing research and listening to his message. So this is what we're here for. We are here to reaffirm that we are brothers and we are sisters, and that we love each other. As we march down here, every so often I want you to look at a brother and say, I love you and I respect you, King, and I want to see you live.
You might age with time comes wisdom, and his wisdom, he was wise beyond his years. So a lot of us are looking for that way. A lot of us want to do something better. A lot of us want to do something different, and we don't know how. He was one of those people that was the extension cord to explain to you how to do something different. He was telling you not to be violent. He was telling you to be entrepreneurs. He was telling you to educate yourself. He was telling you to unify.
I'm a urban legend. South Central and
I want to go back to my panel on this. I mean, this is, again, one of the things that in the wake of Nipsey Hussle's death is that having real conversations about how we interact with one another, how we deal with conflict resolution, where the answer is not, in terms of from disrespect, is to get a gun and kill someone. This is something that, these are conversations, Kelly, we have to have internally, regardless of what people are saying externally.
We absolutely need to have that conversation. But I also want to note that I was reading up on this march, and the notion of black on black crime kept coming up. And I really want people to disabuse themselves of the notion that black on black crime exist. These crimes happen because of proximity, and Black people are proximate to Black people. And
But here's my deal. Here's my whole deal. Okay, if somebody says black on black crime, I'm going to say white on white crime. And I'm gonna say so my deal is the problem for me is when we allow folks to somehow establish that there's black pathology as if white folks don't kill each other. But I still believe, though, that fine, even if that's the case, we still have to deal with the reality of what happens in our communities where we are killing each other and the PTSD, the trauma that it is causing as a result.
You know, Roland,
no, I absolutely agree.
Hold, Julian. Kelly, finish there, Julian.
No, I'm saying I absolutely agree with you with that. I just wanted to put that notion out there because that in itself can be toxic to the further discussion of what we really need to do in our communities to stop this from happening. We definitely need to invest in more therapy. We definitely need to invest in more community engagement and outreach in order to, better our communities and better our mental health within our communities. But this is definitely a great start. The march was definitely a great start.
Julian, go ahead.
I agree that the march is a great start, but I think we've got to peel back the layers of, again, this is about white supremacy. It's about follow the money. Why is there such a proliferation of guns in the African-American community? And there are too many guns in this country anyway. But in our community, you don't have to go too far to find an illegal weapon. You don't have to go too far to be able to shoot somebody. It's just too easy.
But Julian, here's the deal. Here's what I'm going to push back on that. Because even though access to guns, how easy they are, I don't have one. And what I'm saying, this is why I'm saying this. You're right about white supremacy. And what I'm saying is, and I said this when Cleo was here and when some other, the Greg Carr was here, we have to have what I call a reprogramming of black people.
Oh, yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. The internal conversations are, even if the guns are sitting right, if the gun is sitting in that chair not far from me, there must be something inside of me that's going to tell me don't reach for it. And I'm saying,
here's the thing.
Go ahead.
Here's the thing. Hurt people hurt people. There's a pathology out here that's a pathology of poverty, the pathology of high crime. This Eric Holder who shot Nipsey Hussle, we don't know what his story is. I'm not making excuses for him. He had no business doing it, of course. But Tamika Mallory's point on the tape is a very important point. You swim in this water. Yes, we do need to be reprogrammed, but meanwhile, back at the ranch, there's some external things that we can begin to do about gun availability, about better education, about poor employment, all of that.
But we can do both, Chris Metzler. And the thing is, we have to confront the real issues of pain, of trauma, of PTSD, all of these things where somebody can say something and a person goes from 0 to 60 in the matter of seconds, and it goes from a discussion to a murder. I was listening to one of the guys who got shot along with Nipsey Hussle, an interview that he did, and he said it literally went from this guy talking to Hussle to 3 minutes later, he shot Hussle's dead. It all happened in 3 minutes, Chris.
Yeah, and look, as somebody who owns a number of guns, I've got sons who own a number of guns. In fact, I think you're right, Roland. We do have to have that conversation dealing with those issues of pain, of trauma, of all of those kinds of things. The issue is not the ownership of the gun. The issue is the fact that we are so programmed to use it in a way that it was not meant to be used. And that's the issue. I talk to my sons about that all the time. So that's really the issue more so than anything else.
Well, let me say this here. Again, this guy, some dude on Jared on YouTube is like, well, why don't you carry a gun? Because I don't need to. Because I don't have to. Because I don't want to. Okay? It's real simple. And what I'm saying is we have to begin the process. Even when we are looking at our nieces and nephews and our cousins, when they are fighting, we have to begin to say, that is not how you can resolve conflicts. And so it means us having a collective in our community and not just saying it has to be some, let's get everybody together for a big meeting. Like, no, it's literally dealing with this notion that the way for us to address our conflict is to actually resort to violence. That simply can't be the case, because if you look at the impact of Nipsey Hussle, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, there was this one person who put together this great chart that showed the economic impact, and guess what? He's gone. All those jobs, all the opportunities, all the things that he did, those things are gone. He didn't die natural death. He died at 33. And so at some point, we've got to be willing to say, how do we have those conversations in our community that's not involving white folks on Fox News talking about, oh my God, this is what you've been doing? No, that we deal with the reality that we have been programmed as a people to hate one another since 1619. And we have had to deal with terror, generations of terror, generations of mental terror, generations of economic terror, generations of political terror, and we have been trying to claw ourselves out of this. And what I'm saying is, here we are 24 years away from America becoming a nation, majority of people of color, and we have to be sure that we are not ourselves doing the work of white supremacy. So that's why I say there has to be this reprogramming of Black America, and only we can do it. Kelly, Chris, Juliana, I appreciate all of you being on the show today, folks. If you want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered, please join our Bring the Funk fan club by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Every dollar you give supports us in what we do. Of course, we're going to be traveling very soon. I'm going to be in Vegas this week, Thursday and Friday, but next week, a school choice initiative. I'm going to be at a town hall in Sacramento next Tuesday. Wednesday, I'm in Houston for the Women of Color Presidential Forum taking place at Texas Southern University. Thursday, April 25th, we're going to be in Virginia Beach for the XQ America Town Hall event taking place there, where Pharrell is having his music summit, music festival, April 29th. We'll also be broadcasting the show from Greensboro, North Carolina. And so we've got some great things lined up for all of you. We need your support. Your dollars make this possible, along with our partners like AFSCME and so many others. If you're in YouTube right now, you can give right there, or you can go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, give to us via Cash App, Square, or even PayPal. So whatever amount you give, $5, $50, 500, doesn't matter. It goes to support what we do and allows us to remain independent, allows us to remain unfiltered. So we appreciate that so very much. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Yeah, H-Town, we going up 2-0 tonight against Utah. I got to go. Holla! You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered, the blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it.